everyone. Welcome to Ingrid's World. I'm your host, Ingrid Paris Hicklin, and on this show, we're going to meet Sandra Manigault, who has taught math in high school and has been a college professor. Sandra has written several books and teaches workshops on how to write your own book. She's an educator, writer, entrepreneur. Let's welcome the awesome Sandra Manigault to Ingrid's World. Welcome to the show, Sandra.
Hi, Ingrid. Thank you for such a beautiful introduction. It's a pleasure
Oh,
to
well,
be
you're
here.
just one beautiful person.
Oh,
And
thank
through
you.
and through, for sure.
Thanks so
So,
much.
Sandra, you've been an educator and
Mhm.
you've done work in college. I mean, how did you end up becoming a writer? Because I just don't quite see how that
I
fits.
know I wasn't planning to be a writer, even though I always wanted to write. I never really gave it much energy. I was at a teachers' conference in Vail, Colorado. It was for community college teachers of color from all over the United States. Phenomenal. And at the end of the conference, everyone had to commit to doing something at their home college. So I watched them go all the way around the room, and everybody else stood up and said what they were going to do. And I had no idea what I was going to say. But I stood up and I said, I'm going to write a book to empower students to do math more effectively. And then I sat down and I thought to myself, what did you just say? What did you just commit to? And so it took a while, but that's how the first book got started. And it was published in 97, the book for math empowerment. First book, nonfiction, self help. And it got started from there. And then it just kind of morphed into one thing after another, depending upon the experiences I had in a creative writing class and just in general.
So you also take classes too? You've taken classes on
I've
writing?
taken a few, yes, yes. The surprising thing was I thought I'd have to go someplace really special. Where I got the most was Northern Virginia Community College.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I taught at one branch. I took my creative writing classes at another. And I had the
Ah.
most phenomenal teacher. Her name was Laura Casal. Phenomenal teacher. Because not everybody can teach creativity courses. She can. And my second book, Fragments of a Woman's Life, a Memoir, was born in her class. My first novel, Vanessa, a Love Story, was born in another of her classes. And it just took off from there.
Wow. So
Yeah.
what's the process of writing? Because it's
Mhm.
almost like you're churning them out, but what's the
Mhm. Mhm.
process that you
Yeah.
use?
Yeah. I think the process started with book one. Um, Before I actually got into it, I took a creativity course that I found accidentally advertised. It was in Arlington. And the textbook they used was a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. That's the book that was the impetus to get me started writing. One of her processes, the main process, was a process of journaling every single day. She called it her morning pages. So she was like a silent mentor. So I'm going to classes on Sunday afternoons. I'm doing all the exercises during the week, Monday through Sunday, religiously, journaling. And the
Wow.
journaling accomplished a lot. That's what got the process started. And as hard as I try in my writing workshops for women to tell them, if you journal, you'll become a writer, not everyone listens.
Ah, because see, that's my next question.
Yeah,
So a lot of people want to write books. I'm
right.
one. Uh,
Hmm.
where do you get started?
Yeah. Well, if you can be in a great class with a great teacher, that helps. But I think the process of journaling every day makes all the difference. Now, this book, The Artist's Way, it doesn't just tell you to journal and how to journal. It goes through a lot of what goes on in your head as a creative person. So, whatever blocks you've had that have stood in your way of becoming whatever it is you wanted to do, whether it was a writer or a dancer or a musician, whatever it was, that helps you work through those blocks and gets them cleared off the table so you can become the best you. So I recommend her books, and I also recommend that perfect class if you can find it and do it.
Ah, so
Yeah,
that's what it's
yeah,
all about.
right. That's both. It's both.
So that makes a lot of sense. So I've heard, and I don't know if this
Mhm,
is true. They said a
mhm.
good writer also is an avid reader. Is there any truth to that?
I think so. I was not an avid reader growing up. There were stages where I'd fall in love with this author or that author for a hot minute, and I'd read a few books. But I didn't start devouring books until well into my adult life. And I read all kinds of books, surprisingly, mostly by women of color, and practically everybody was a 20th, 21st century writer. So I like the contemporary stuff. Now, there were a few men writers that I liked: John Grisham, Robin Cook, Mark Matabane, but not in general. And I was very particular. And if I could fall in love with the book by page 2, the book came home with me, whether it was the bookstore, the library, not like high school where you're on page 20 wondering, when is it going to get started? No, no. So, and I think that makes a difference. It drives the process, I think.
So a lot of times people say that they want to write, but they just don't seem to have the time to write.
Mm-hmm,
And again, I
mm-hmm.
share that sentiment with
Right.
with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the time will be there if it's a priority. It's got to be important to you. Because if it's not important to you, you'll do everything else. You'll vacuum the floor, you'll make lunches, you'll bake cookies, and all that is fine. But if you want to be a writer, you've got to set aside time to write. Now, I started writing in the morning. I would get up, I'd write before I got a shower. I would write first thing, and I'd write for 20 minutes, half an hour, depending upon how much time I had. That was the journaling process. And between the journaling, you will get the book written too once you make up your mind what you're going to write about. But you've got to have a process. And I think if a person doesn't really have a systematic way to do it, it won't happen. Now, I have to admit, my later novels I've written differently. First of all, I was writing longhand, and then I started writing on an iPad. With the iPad, certainly for novel number 2, novel number 3, the iPad was always with me. And whatever I was doing, I could pause and write out a few sentences. So you have to be driven. I was driven.
So Sandra, you write, but do you ever deal with, let's say, writer's block?
Good question. No, not anymore. Not at all. When I was a student in high school and college, yes. Once I started journaling, no, it literally went away.
Do you journal every day?
No, no. But I usually am writing something every day. Now, there are periods when I don't write, and then I'm usually reading something I've already written that I'm proofreading, perfecting, whatever, editing. But usually reading or writing something every day. Something. No writer's block. And I think what the people who refuse to journal don't get, journaling takes writing block off the table. At least that's been my experience.
Wow, that's like amazing. So you do the journal. First of all, tell our viewers
Yeah. Mhm.
about your books because we've talked about the
Okay.
writing
Okay.
process, but we
Right.
haven't even talked about what the
I
book is
know.
about.
I know. Well, the latest ones are what I call the Vanessa trilogy. It starts off Vanessa, a love story. That's the original book about a young African American professor, who's a psychology professor, who is undergoing the aftermath of a divorce. And she meets a man. And she thinks maybe there is something very special in this man. And that's how Vanessa, a love story, begins and evolves. And there are the ups and downs of that relationship and what it becomes and what it does not become. But the book ends in such a way that for some people it's up in the air. For me, I thought it was finished, but it was not. So after Vanessa, a love story, there was the next chapter. And a friend helped me title it Vanessa, the Next Chapter. That was the sequel. However, in the book, there is another character who is primary, well, actually secondary, but she is a main focal figure, and that's her friend Flora. Third book to round out the trilogy is called Flora Saga. So the first book, although it's titled a love story, it really is more or less women's fiction with romantic overtones. The second book, I'd say definitely a love story. Third book, yeah, again. But again, I'm hoping it, fits that genre the way I think it does, because I don't have two of this and three of that and four of the other. It's just what it is. Yeah,
Wow. I tell you,
yeah.
I wonder if you're the only ones, like someone who's a math teacher who also writes fiction. I'm
I don't
wondering.
think so. I think so. I don't think I'm that unusual, but I do write across the genres. The second book was a memoir. The first and third books were math empowerment books, one for children, one for older people. And then there are these novels. But the novels keep coming one after the other after the other. I'm working on a fourth, trying to publish the third, but creating a fourth at the same time.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
yeah,
So, on the back of your novel,
yeah.
you say, every woman is a writer and she has a book in her.
I believe that. I really believe that, Ingrid. I think for so many women, they're afraid to commit to the book. And I think a lot of women want to write about themselves, but I think they are inhibited because they don't want to say too much, or they don't want to talk about other people in earnest. And I think it's possible to write that memoir if that's what you want, the book about family. You can write it, but you can write it with discretion. You don't have to tell everything.
Oh, so it
This
doesn't have
is
to be
your
a
book.
tell all.
No, why should it be? Why would you want to tell all about other people?
Yeah.
Why would you, there are things even about ourselves that we don't want everyone to know. So it's your book. And if it's a memoir, a memoir can just be a portion of who you are. It doesn't have to be your whole life story. It's not a memoir, it's not intended, I don't think, to be an autobiography. So, yeah. And I think a lot of people get started with nonfiction. Fiction's a different thing. Fiction has a life of
So you said the first part
you, at least
is you should write a nonfiction? Is that your suggestion?
well, no, I'm saying a lot of people start with nonfiction.
Oh, I
They want
see.
to write about something that is outside of themselves. It might be their area of expertise, but it's not a book about them personally. So, or if it is a book about them personally, it's still nonfiction.
Yeah, I,
It's
I am so glad that you said that because I said, well, I'd like to write a book, but, then I write the book, then half the people won't speak to me anymore. So,
well, that's
no
where the
doubt.
discretion comes in.
I have scandal. So,
Oh, that sounds like a good book. Write that one.
okay. So you said you don't have to tell everything.
No, but if it's scandalous and going to sell, tell some things.
As they say, I'll be pouring some hot tea.
Yes, you should. You should. Yeah.
So people say, "Oh my goodness, no, she didn't."
Yeah, she did. She did. Can I, if I can, I want to say one thing about the fiction I write. I get very deep into the character's character. And
Ah,
one of the things I find interesting is when I write the story, I'm talking about the men from hearing the story from their point of view as much as from the woman's point of view. And I think that's important because the characters are important and the character of the men is vital to understanding how a relationship's going to evolve.
ah.
I love my male characters. Some are not pristine in terms of their behavior, but the ones that are keepers, they are. And I think any woman would love them.
So you also do like writing workshops. Do you actually teach writing workshops?
I do. I do. Not at a college, but independently for women's organizations,
Nice.
or for women's ministries. I did a very successful one for the women's ministry at my own church, First Mount Zion Baptist, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And they gave me about an hour and a half, and I just did whatever I wanted to and just talked about how I got started, my process, how they can do it, just a lot of issues that women are dealing with in terms of what do they do to develop their own creative path. And I've done them for book clubs. So, yeah, I do. They're fun. Only for women, though.
Only for women,
Only
though.
for women. And I find that there is something about a group of women being together, they can be more open and they're able to be more forthcoming in ways that they're not with the estrogen, only with the estrogen and not the testosterone. That's what I meant to say. No testosterone. And it makes a difference. It really does. Really does.
That makes sense. So
Mm,
it's for women, and you are
yeah.
able to exchange. So you're very accomplished. So what's
Mm,
next for Sandra Manigault?
that's a good question. Hopefully, more writing workshop opportunities and more novels.
And more
Because
novels.
if it made sense to publish two novels at the same time, I would try to do that because book four, which really occurs between book two and book three, book four is just special. It's not about my
Wow.
two original female characters, it's about two additional characters.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
That's like
about a pair of,
amazing.
pair of identical twins, Flora sisters, identical twins,
Okay.
which means rather than one love story, we have two in the same book. So it's been fun. It's been fun. I love it.
It's fascinating. It's like you build a character and then
Yeah.
you and it's almost like, I know when I read your book, it was almost like you could actually I could picture the person in my
Oh
head.
yeah. Yes. Yes. That's the idea. That's
Ah,
the
so
idea.
that was intentional.
I know. Do you want to hear something really weird?
Yes.
I was at a book event in Maryland, a conference where there's a women's conference going on, and off to the side there was a young woman sitting by herself. And in my head, the first thing I thought of when I saw her, I said, "Oh my God, there's Flora. There's Flora." Now she's a character in the first book, but this woman looked exactly like I envisioned Flora to look. And I talked to her briefly, but I thought to myself, if I tell her you're Flora, she'll probably think I've lost my mind. And in retrospect, I wish I had done that. But I've never seen a person and thought, oh my goodness, that's my character. Because you
Wow.
have a visual of your characters, but you don't necessarily have every detail crisp
Wow.
in your mind. Yeah, she's the only character I've ever met from one of my books.
So it was the only one that you actually met that was from your book.
I haven't met any of the guys. Haven't seen them yet. But yeah, that was just crazy. Yeah.
That's like fascinating to me because
Yeah.
you have a whole vision about
Yeah.
how the character looks, but
Right.
but do you actually visualize, you draw pictures, because I know you're also an artist too.
Of sorts. Of sorts. I consider my husband to be the serious artist. I kind of dabble. I just dabble. And no, I don't do faces. I have an idea of what the characters look like. I describe them. They're in their 30s, they're a certain size, they look a certain way, they have a certain energy, but not in minute detail. And no, I don't draw them. I just visualize, imagine them.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's really interesting. So
it's fun.
next steps to that, and I know we're showing a picture of a desk, and is that your writing desk, your
Yes, it
area?
is.
Do
That's
you
where I write.
really? It's so
That's where I write.
elegant.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I don't do anything else there. It's very rare that I sit there and do anything else like write bills or something.
I'm about to
I use
say,
it. No,
so
yeah,
you don't sit there because I was like, oh, I said,
no.
so you only, that is really your sanctuary for writing.
It is. It is. Nobody else sits there ever. Ever. Nope. Nope.
No
Nope.
one ever
Will not.
sits there ever. That's why you're successful. That's how you can churn out all these books. You know that now we're digging deep to how Sandra gets this done.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some other routines you have that
Oh, not a lot. Not a lot. Just again, I've been addicted to the iPad lately. So if I'm in writing mode, the iPad is with me and zap a commercial, write a sentence or two. But basically, just write, wherever you are. It goes with me on vacations. In fact, I took the last one with me on vacation, got a lot done on
oh my
vacation. Yeah,
goodness.
yeah,
And so you got a lot done and you took it on vacation.
I did.
So what it is that I'm hearing from you is that writing for you is, let's say, it's just truly enjoyable.
It is. It is. And I think, again, once you get on the other side of writer's block, writing becomes a pleasurable thing to do. Oh, one thing I want to say about that. One of the reasons I think I had writer's block as I was a student in school is I was writing and editing as I wrote. And that's something that Julia Cameron in her book Artist's Way says, do not do. You write, and the editing is done after the creativity part has taken place. If you try to write and craft what I call these perfect little sentences, you block yourself.
Oh, so you
And I think
just write,
you
but
just
don't worry
write.
about trying to edit.
You don't edit. You don't edit. You just write it. You just write.
Okay, so like
And this
my
doesn't mean you don't punctuate. You put your periods and your commas in place. But at the same time, you don't worry about, oh, I think I'm going to come back and fix this. No, I think no, you don't change stuff. You just write it. You write it and you get a certain body of work done, and then you come back and you fix it later. And this doesn't mean write the whole book and come back. No, but you might get 2 or 3 pages done or more, or a chapter done, and then come back and fix. But you don't write a sentence and fix a sentence and write another sentence and ponder over the sentence. No.
oh my goodness. Okay, so that's my aha
Yeah.
moment because how I write is I write a sentence. Oh, let's fix this sentence. Then I write another
No,
sentence.
no,
Oh,
don't do
let's
that.
fix that sentence.
No, don't write like that. Don't write like that.
That's a no-no.
Yeah, that's the no-no.
Okay, wow. What a treat you are. Well, I have to thank you so much for being on Ingrid's World. You know, you've given me lots of tips, and I know our
Sure.
viewers are going to just love, what they've heard. And how can they see Sandra Manigault? We have how do we find more information about you?
My website's the best place, sandralynnlegacies.com. And
Wonderful.
the email is the same, except sandralynnlegacies@gmail.com. And that's the best place. That's the best place. Every so often I get on LinkedIn or Facebook, but always on always on my website.
Always on the
Yeah.
website. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Sandra, for being an outstanding guest.
Oh, thank you so much, Ingrid, for having me. My pleasure. My
Yes.
pleasure.
And I'd like to thank Sandra for being on Ingrid's World. And I hope our viewers have been inspired to write and tell their story. I know I have. My inspirational quote this time is from Toni Morrison. If there is a book that you want to read but hasn't been written yet, you must then be the one to write. Thank you for watching Ingrid's World. And don't forget to friend us on Facebook and follow Ingrid's World VA in Twitter and Instagram. And if you miss an episode, you know what to do. Watch Ingrid's World on YouTube or at ingridsworld.org. Thanks for watching.